After 60-odd years of watching folks come and go, I've noticed something about the ones who live alone. They don't stop caring, they just get better at hiding it. Build walls so high they forget there's a door. I knew a man like that once. Lived 12 miles from the nearest road. Hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks. Until one night, something came knocking that didn't care about his walls. The scratching came at 2 in the morning. Nathan Cole grabbed the rifle before his feet hit the floor. 20 years of instinct. 6 years of solitude. Nothing good knocked at a cabin door in a Montana blizzard. He crossed the room. The scratching stopped, then started again. Lower, deliberate, not a bear. Bears don't wait. He thumbed off the safety, pulled the door open. Wind slammed his face. Snow drove horizontal, stinging his eyes. He raised the barrel and stopped. A wolf. Massive. Black. Standing 3 feet from the muzzle. It didn't run. Behind it, half buried in the drift, another shape. Gray fur. Dark stain spreading beneath it. The black wolf took 1 step forward, toward the gun. If this story speaks to you, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we'd be grateful for your support. It helps us bring more stories like this one. Nathan's finger rested on the trigger guard. Not the trigger. Not yet. The wolf's breath rose in white plumes. Snow caked its fur. Ice crystals forming along its muzzle, but those eyes, steady, fixed on his, didn't waver. Behind Nathan, the cabin exhaled its familiar smells. Wood smoke, coffee gone cold on the counter, the faint musk of wool blankets unwashed too long. A single plate sat by the stove, a single cup, 1 chair at the table. On a nail by the door hung a collar. Leather cracked and faded. The tag worn smooth. But Nathan knew every letter without looking. Ghost. 6 years since he'd carried that collar home in his jacket pocket. 6 years since Jack Brennan's blood dried in the creases of his palms. The wind shifted. His thermal undershirt did nothing against the cold, sawing into his chest. His left leg throbbed old shrapnel, buried too deep to remove, flaring in weather like this. The black wolf still hadn't moved. Any wild animal should have bolted by now. The gun! The human scent. The open door spilling firelight into the dark. Every instinct should have screamed, run. But this one stood there. Patient. Still. Nathan had lived in these mountains for 30 years. He'd seen wolves from a distance, shadows moving through the timber, howls echoing across the valleys. They avoided humans. That was how it worked. This was different. He thought of the scraps he'd been leaving on the back porch. Venison trimmings. Bones with meat still clinging to them. A habit he couldn't explain. Even to himself. Feeding something he never expected to see up close. Maybe this wolf had seen him. Maybe it remembered. Or maybe Nathan was reading too much into an animal's stare. The shape in the snow moved. A sound cut through the wind high. Thin. A whimper that barely registered as animal. The black wolf turned its head, just for a second, looking back at the fallen shape. Then it faced Nathan again, and did something that made his throat tighten. It lay down, right there in the snow, between Nathan and the wounded animal. Head still raised, eyes still fixed on his. Nathan had seen that posture before. Not in a wolf, in a soldier. Covering a fallen brother with his own body. His hands steady for 20 years of combat. steady through everything, began to shake. Nathan lowered the rifle. 1 inch, then another. The black wolf watched, but didn't move. Snow accumulated on its shoulders, its back, the ridge of its skull. It could have been carved from the mountain itself. Nathan stepped off the porch. His boots punched through the crust of ice into softer snow beneath. Cold shot up through his soles, into his ankles, his knees. The shrapnel in his left thigh pulsed with each step. The wolf's ears flattened. A low sound rose in its chest, not a growl. Something deeper, a warning, maybe, or something else entirely. "Easy!" Nathan's voice came out rough. He hadn't spoken to anything but the walls in 11 days. "Easy now." He moved around the black wolf, gave it space. The animal's head tracked him, but it stayed down, still positioned between Nathan and whatever lay bleeding in that drift. The gray wolf was smaller than the male. Female, Nathan guessed. Her coat was matted, clumped with ice, and something darker. The smell hit him before he got close iron and rot. Sweet, underneath. Wrong. He crouched. His knee popped loud enough to hear over the wind. The gray wolf's eyes were slits, barely open. Her breathing came shallow and fast, ribs stuttering beneath the fur. Then he saw the leg. Nathan's stomach clenched hard, a steel jaw trap, the kind they'd outlawed 30 years ago. But poachers still set them near the border. He'd reported finding 3 last spring. Called the Wildlife Office in Helena. Nothing changed. Nothing ever changed. The trap's teeth had crushed the bone above the ankle, splintered it. White fragments showed through the mess of muscle and tendon. The chain hung limp. She must have pulled free somewhere out in the dark. Dragged the whole apparatus through miles of wilderness before collapsing here. At his door, Nathan looked back at the black wolf. At the cabin behind it. At the scraps he'd been leaving on the back porch for weeks now. Maybe they'd been watching him longer than he knew. The gray wolf whimpered. A thin sound, barely audible over the wind. Her eyes found Nathan's face, and held there. No fight left in them, just exhaustion. Nathan stood. His hands were shaking now, and he couldn't make them stop. "I can't help you," he said it out loud. To the wolves, to himself, to the howling dark. "You understand I'm not a vet. I'm not anything anymore. I can't." The black wolf rose. Nathan's hand snapped to the rifle strap, but the wolf didn't advance. It walked slowly, deliberately to where its companion lay bleeding, and it lay down again, pressed its body against hers, sharing heat, sharing whatever time she had left. Nathan watched, his chest tight, his breath coming harder than the cold could explain. He thought about the field kit under his bed, sutures, iodine, the hunting knife he kept sharp out of habit. He'd used that kit twice in his life. Once on Ghost, after shrapnel tore through the dog's shoulder in a convoy ambush. Once on Jack, in the back of a transport that smelled like diesel and copper. Ghost survived that day. Jack didn't. Nathan looked at his hands, at the gray wolf's leg, at the black wolf lying still, watching him with those steady eyes. He could go inside. Close the door. In the morning, there'd be nothing but 2 frozen shapes in the snow. He could bury them when the ground thawed, or let the ravens have them. That was nature. That was how things worked out here. Clean hands. That was the deal he'd made with himself when he built this cabin. No attachments, no responsibilities, Nothing that could bleed out in his arms while he watched. Helpless. His hands hadn't been clean in 6 years. Not really. The gray wolf's breathing was slowing, each exhale longer than the last. "This is stupid," Nathan muttered. "This is the stupidest thing I've ever—" He slung the rifle over his shoulder, bent down, slid his arms beneath the gray wolf's body. She yelped. A sharp cry that cut through the wind. The black wolf surged to its feet, teeth bared, a snarl building in its throat. Nathan froze. Didn't move, didn't breathe. "I'm trying to help her." His voice was quiet, steady, the same tone he'd used with bomb dogs in the field. "You hear me? Help." The black wolf's lips trembled over those teeth, every muscle coiled. 1 second, 2, 3. Then, slowly, the snarl faded. The wolf stepped back, 1 pace, 2, giving room. Nathan lifted the gray wolf. She weighed less than she should, half-starved, dehydrated, blood loss taking the rest. She whimpered again, but didn't snap. Too weak, too far gone. He carried her toward the cabin. Each step sent fire up his left leg. The snow dragged at his boots. The wind tried to knock him sideways. At the threshold, he paused, looked back. The black wolf stood at the bottom of the porch steps. Its eyes caught the firelight from inside 2 points of orange in the black and white world. "You coming or not?" The wolf didn't move, didn't cross. "Suit yourself?" Nathan carried the gray wolf inside, laid her on the wool blanket beside the stove. Her blood immediately began seeping into the fabric dark, almost black in the dim light. He turned to close the door. The black wolf was on the porch now, still not crossing the threshold, but closer, its head low, eyes fixed on its companion by the fire. Nathan understood. Wild animal, enclosed space, against every instinct. He left the door open. The black wolf lay down, right there on the weathered boards, head resting on the threshold, close enough to watch, not close enough to be trapped. Nathan pulled the field kit from under his bed, laid out the supplies on the table: sutures, iodine, scissors, the hunting knife, freshly stropped. He poured vodka into a tin cup, drank half, used the rest to sterilize the blade. Then he looked at the gray wolf's leg, at the crushed bone, the dying tissue, the infection already blooming beneath the surface. He couldn't save the foot. He knew that now. The question was whether he could save anything at all. Nathan pulled a length of rope from his gear pile. The gray wolf's eyes tracked him glassy, unfocused, but aware. "I have to tie your muzzle." He kept his voice low, steady, the same tone he'd used with Ghost before every mission. "You bite me. We both lose. You understand." The wolf didn't move, didn't resist, as he looped the rope around her snout. He tied it loose enough for her to breathe, tight enough to matter. On the porch, the black wolf shifted. A low sound rose from its chest. "She's not going to like this next part." Nathan positioned himself beside the wounded leg. "Neither am I." He picked up the knife. The blade caught the firelight, clean, sharp. He'd stropped it 2 days ago, the way he did every week. Because routine was all that kept him moving through the empty hours, Nathan pressed the edge against the dead tissue above the trap wound. The flesh was cold, discolored, gray at the edges where infection had already spread. He cut. The gray wolf convulsed. A high whine escaped the rope around her muzzle. Thin, desperate. Nathan pinned her shoulder with his elbow and kept cutting. Fast. Clean. The way the army taught him. Hesitation kills. Second-guessing kills. You commit, or you fail. Blood welled up, dark, almost black. He wiped it away with his sleeve and saw what he'd feared. The bone was shattered beyond saving. White fragments jutted from the muscle like broken teeth. No amount of stitching would hold that together. He was going to have to take the foot. Nathan's stomach rolled. He swallowed hard, tasted vodka and bile. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." He repositioned the blade, found the joint where the damage ended and healthy tissue began, drew a breath that burned in his chest, and cut. The wolf screamed, a sound no rope could muffle, raw. Animal, tearing through the cabin and out into the storm. On the porch, the black wolf lunged to its feet. Its body filled the doorway. Teeth bared, eyes wild. Nathan froze, knife in hand, blood on his fingers. "I have to," his voice cracked. "She dies if I don't. You hear me?" The black wolf's chest heaved. Its lips trembled over those yellow teeth. Every muscle coiled to spring. 1 second, 2. Then, slowly, so slowly, Nathan could count the heartbeats pounding in his own ears. The wolf sat back down, still in the doorway, still watching, but no longer poised to attack. Nathan turned back to the gray wolf. Her eyes had rolled back. Unconscious shock. Blood loss. Maybe both. He worked faster now, cut away the last of the dead tissue, flushed the wound with iodine. The smell burned his nostrils, mixed with blood and infection and wood smoke into something he'd never forget. Sutures next. His fingers found the rhythm without thought. In and out. Pull tight. Tie off. In and out. An hour passed. Maybe more. Nathan lost track. 16 stitches. 17. 18. When it was done, he wrapped the stump with strips torn from his last clean shirt. The fabric turned red immediately, but the bleeding was slowing, clotting, the body doing what bodies do when given half a chance. Nathan sat back on his heels. His hands were shaking. His undershirt was soaked through with sweat despite the cold seeping in from the open door. The fire had burned down to embers, and he hadn't noticed. The gray wolf's chest rose and fell. Shallow but steady. Alive. He looked at his hands, at the blood drying in the creases of his palms. For a moment, it wasn't wolf blood. It was Jack's. It was ghosts. It was every life that had slipped through his fingers while he knelt there. Helpless. Useless. "Stop it." He said it out loud. To the memory. To himself. He stood. His left leg nearly buckled. The shrapnel throbbed deep in the muscle, aggravated by cold and crouching and the hours he'd lost track of. The black wolf was still in the doorway, still watching. But something had changed in its posture. The tension had drained from its shoulders. Its head rested on its front paws now, not guarding against Nathan anymore, guarding with him. Nathan walked to the stove, added 2 logs, watched the flames catch and climb. The heat pushed back against the cold, pouring through the open door, and he thought about closing it, thought about the warmth he was losing, the fuel he was burning. He left it open. He lowered himself into his chair, the rifle across his lap, habit, not intention. The gray wolf slept by the stove. The black wolf watched from the threshold, and Nathan sat in the middle, listening to the storm howl, waiting for dawn. He didn't sleep. But sometime in the small hours, his eyes grew heavy. His chin dropped toward his chest. When he jerked awake, gray light was seeping through the frost-covered windows. The storm had paused, not ended, just gathering strength for another assault. Nathan knew the rhythm. 30 years in these mountains taught a man to read the weather. He stood. His joints popped and cracked. His left leg screamed with every step. The gray wolf was still breathing, still alive. Her eyes opened when he approached, wary, but not hostile. The black wolf had moved sometime in the night. Now it lay just inside the doorway, close enough to feel the fire's warmth, still not fully inside, but closer. Nathan opened the door to clear the snow that had drifted against the porch overnight, stepped outside, and stopped. Tracks, wolf tracks, dozens of them. They circled the cabin in a wide arc, came close to the walls, close enough to touch, then retreated to the tree line. The snow held their story like a page. The pack had come in the night, looking for their missing members. They'd found them here, at the human's door, and they'd waited, watched, then left before dawn. But they hadn't attacked, hadn't tried to enter. Nathan crouched at the edge of the porch, studied the prints, large ones, medium ones, adults, juveniles, all pressed deep into the snow, and one set smaller than the rest, much smaller. Pup tracks. Nathan's breath caught. He looked back at the cabin, at the black wolf watching him from the doorway. There was a pup with them. He said it aloud. Watched the wolf's ears twitch at his voice. Where is it now? The black wolf didn't move, but something shifted in those steady eyes, and Nathan understood with sudden, cold certainty. The pup hadn't come back with the pack. The pup was still out there. The gray wolf drank water on the second morning. Nathan held the bowl close to her muzzle, tilting it so she didn't have to lift her head. Her tongue lapped weakly 3 times, 4, then stopped. But it was something. More than he'd expected. Her eyes were clearer now, still glazed with pain, but tracking. Following Nathan as he moved around the cabin, watching his hands when he changed her bandages, flinching when the iodine hit the wound, but not snapping, not fighting. The black wolf came and went. Slipping out at dawn through the door, Nathan still hadn't closed, returning at dusk with blood on his muzzle hunting, feeding himself so he didn't need Nathan's stores. Smart, independent, still wild in all the ways that mattered. But each night, he came back, lay in the same spot on the threshold, watched his companion sleep by the stove. Nathan found himself talking to them. Small things, words he hadn't said aloud in weeks. Storm's building again. Radio says 48 hours. The black wolf's ear twitched. You shed worse than Ghost did. Didn't think that was possible. No response, just those steady eyes. Coffee's burned. You're not missing anything. The gray wolf's gaze followed him to the stove, back to the table, down to the floor where he sat to check her bandages. She was learning his patterns, mapping his movements the way prey animals map predators. Only she wasn't looking at him like prey anymore. On the afternoon of the second day, Nathan unwrapped the stump to check his work. The swelling had gone down. The stitches held, but the skin around them was hot to the touch. Too hot. And the smell faint. But there, sweet underneath the iodine. Infection. Nathan sat back, stared at the wound. He'd cleaned it, flushed it, done everything the field manual taught, but field medicine only went so far. Without antibiotics, without proper veterinary care, the infection would spread into the blood, into the organs. She'd die. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Nathan looked at the gray wolf. She looked back. I don't have what you need. His voice was quiet, rough at the edges. You understand I've got nothing left to give. The black wolf stood, walked to the window, stared south, toward the mountains barely visible through the frost on the glass. Nathan followed his gaze. 8 miles south. The research station. Grace Holloway, the wildlife biologist who tagged the elk herds every spring. She had a veterinary kit, antibiotics, equipment. She'd know what to do. 8 miles, in a blizzard, with a dying wolf on a sled. That's suicide, Nathan said. The black wolf didn't turn around. Night fell. Nathan sat at the table, head in his hands. The radio crackled with static weather report on loop. Storm arriving by dawn. 48 hours of whiteout conditions. Stay indoors. Avoid travel. If he waited, she'd die. If he went, he might die too. The gray wolf whimpered in her sleep. A small sound. Pain leaking through even in unconsciousness. Nathan lifted his head, looked at her, at the black wolf still stationed by the window, staring into the dark. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. He said it out loud, to the cabin, to the wolves, to the ghosts that lived in every corner. I came out here so I wouldn't have to care about anything. You understand, I quit. I gave up. I don't want this. The black wolf turned, looked at him. Nathan's throat tightened. Everyone I try to help dies. That's the rule. That's how it works. Jack, Ghost, everyone. The wolf didn't blink, didn't move. If I drag her through that storm and she dies anyway. He couldn't finish. The words lodged somewhere behind his sternum, sharp and immovable. The gray wolf made another sound, softer this time. Nathan looked at her. Her eyes were open. Watching him, something in that gaze that he couldn't name and didn't want to, something cracked in his chest. Something he'd spent 6 years trying to keep frozen solid. Okay? He stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. Okay. Let's go. Pre-dawn. The sky still black, but the quality of the darkness had changed. Thinner at the edges, the storm was coming. Nathan loaded the sled. Blankets first, everyone he owned, layered thick. Then the gray wolf, wrapped tight, only her muzzle exposed to the air. She didn't fight, didn't whimper, just watched him with those steady eyes. The black wolf paced beside him, agitated, sensing what was coming. You're staying here. Nathan pulled the straps tight. You follow us out there. You'll freeze. The wolf stopped pacing, looked at him, I'm serious. Stay. He turned his back. Started the snowmobile. The engine coughed old fuel. Cold metal sputtered. Caught. The vibration rattled up through his hands, into his shoulders. He pulled away from the cabin. Into the white. 30 seconds later, he glanced back. The black wolf was following. 50 feet behind. Steady pace. Head low against the wind. Stubborn fool. Nathan faced forward. Kept driving. The blizzard hit 2 hours in. One moment. Visibility stretched 100 yards. The next, the world turned white. Snow drove horizontal. Needles of ice that found every gap in Nathan's clothing. His goggles fogged. His fingers went numb inside his gloves. He navigated by instinct. The way the land rose beneath the runners, the angle of the wind against his left cheek. 20 years of reading terrain kept him pointed south when he couldn't see 5 feet in front of him. The snowmobile bucked over a hidden drift. Nathan's teeth clacked together. Behind him, the sled fish-tailed, he corrected. Barely. Felt the runners bite into ice and hold. The gray wolf was silent beneath the blankets. He couldn't tell if she was alive or dead. Couldn't stop to check. Stopping meant freezing. Freezing meant dying. He pushed forward. The engine stuttered. Nathan's heart seized. He gave it throttle too much, then too little, and the machine lurched, coughed, sputtered back to life. Come on! He leaned forward, as if his weight could help. Come on, don't do this. Mile 3, mile 4. The cold had seeped through his boots, his gloves, his thermal layers. His left leg was a single line of fire, from hip to ankle, the shrapnel throbbing with every jolt and bump. He stopped once, cut the engine, reached back and pressed his hand against the blankets. Warmth, faint. But there, movement beneath his palm, a chest rising, falling, still alive. Hold on. His voice was a rasp. Just hold on. He started the engine, pushed forward, mile 6. The snowmobile died, no sputter, no warning, just silence. The engine cut out and the machine coasted to a stop, sinking into a drift that came up past the runners. Nathan tried the ignition. Click, nothing. Again, click, click, nothing. He got off. His legs almost buckled cold and exhaustion and the shrapnel screaming in his thigh. He knelt beside the engine, pulled off his gloves. His fingers were stiff, clumsy. He found the fuel line. Ice. Frozen solid. He worked at it with his knife. Scraping. Chipping. The cold bit into his exposed fingers, turning them white at the tips. Behind him, a shape emerged from the snow. The black wolf. Still there, still following. Its coat was crusted with ice, its breath coming in white plumes. But it was moving. It walked to the sled and stood beside it, pressed its body against the side where its companion lay buried. Nathan looked at the wolf. If I can't get this running. He didn't finish, didn't need to. A sound cut through the wind, low, rising, howling. Not the black wolf, not his pack. Others. Nathan stood, turned. 6 shapes materialized from the white. Gray coats, lean bodies, eyes catching what little light remained. A scarred male in front the leader. Behind him, The rest spread into a half circle, flanking a different pack, territorial, and they'd smelled blood. Nathan reached for his rifle, remembered it was buried under blankets in the sled. He had his knife. That was it. The black wolf stepped forward, positioned itself between Nathan and the newcomers. Its hackles rose. A growl started low in its chest, 6 against 1. Even Nathan knew those odds. The scarred male advanced. 10 feet, 8. Nathan gripped the knife. The cold had stolen most of the feeling in his fingers, but he could still hold, could still cut. "Get behind me," he said to the black wolf, knowing it was useless, knowing the wolf wouldn't obey even if it understood. The scarred male's lips pulled back. Teeth showed, yellow-white and long. This was it. This was how it ended. Frozen in a field, 8 miles from anywhere, dying for a wolf he'd met 3 days ago. There were worse ways to go. Then light, cutting through the white. 2 points of brightness, growing larger. An engine roaring. A snowmobile burst through the curtain of snow. The headlights caught the wild pack full in the face they scattered, peeling away from the light, vanishing back into the storm. The machine slid to a stop. A figure in a red parka swung off. Rifle raised. Crack. A warning shot. Into the sky. The last of the wild pack disappeared. The figure pulled off her goggles. Sharp eyes. Jaw set tight. Maybe 34, 35. "Nathan Cole." Not a question. "Walter radioed me yesterday. Said you hadn't checked in. I've been patrolling this sector since dawn." Nathan's legs almost gave out. He caught himself on the side of the dead snowmobile. Grace Holloway. That's right. She was already moving toward the sled, pulling back the blankets. "I was about to turn back when I saw your—" She stopped, stared at the gray wolf. "You brought a wolf. She needs help." Grace looked at him, then at the black wolf, still standing guard 10 feet away. "That one yours, too." "He's with her." Grace stared for a long moment. Snow accumulated on her shoulders, her hood. The wind screamed around them both. Something shifted in her expression, not understanding. Something closer to recognition. "Get on the back. We're moving." The research station appeared through the storm like something from a dream. 3 buildings huddled together, windows glowing orange against the gray. Smoke rose from a chimney and was torn apart by the wind. Grace pulled up to the main building. Nathan half fell off the back of the snowmobile. His legs didn't want to hold him. A man appeared in the doorway. 71, maybe 72, face like weathered leather. A faded tattoo on his forearm military. Vietnam era. "Look like death warmed over," the man said. "Feel like it too." Walter Moss caught Nathan's arm as he stumbled. Strong grip for an old man. "When's the last time you ate?" Nathan couldn't remember. Grace carried the gray wolf past them, into the building. Nathan tried to follow. His vision blurred. The floor tilted. "Easy." Walter's voice came from far away. "Easy, son. You did your part." Nathan wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but his left leg finally gave out the shrapnel. The cold. The hours he'd lost track of, and he went down. Walter caught him before he hit the floor. The last thing Nathan saw before the darkness took him was a shape through the frosted window, black against white, sitting in the snow, watching. The black wolf hadn't entered the station. But he hadn't left either. Nathan opened his eyes to a ceiling he didn't recognize. White, clean, not the smoke-stained beams of his cabin. He tried to sit up and his body screamed every muscle, every joint, every inch of skin that had touched the cold. Easy. A voice from somewhere to his left. You've been out almost 2 days. Walter Moss sat in a chair by the door. A paperback rested on his knee. Spine cracked. He didn't look up. Nathan's throat felt like sandpaper. The wolf. Alive, Grace worked on her most of that first night. Touch and go for a while. But she pulled through. Walter turned a page. Antibiotics, IV fluids, real medicine, not vodka and a hunting knife. Nathan sank back against the pillow. An IV line ran into his arm. His left leg was bandaged the shrapnel wound, reopened by the cold, now properly dressed. The male, still outside, hasn't moved except to eat what we throw him. Walter finally looked up. His eyes were steady, unreadable. 40 years in these mountains. Never seen a wild wolf act like that. Not once. Nathan stared at the ceiling. Breathed. Alive. She was alive. He hadn't failed. Not this time. He lay there for a long moment, letting the warmth of the station seep into his bones, the smell of antiseptic and coffee, the hum of a generator somewhere in the building, sounds of civilization he'd forgotten existed. Then he heard it. A sound from outside. Pacing. Restless movement in the snow. Nathan turned his head. Through the frost-covered window, he could see a dark shape moving back and forth, back and forth. The black wolf. Agitated in a way Nathan hadn't seen before. He's been doing that since yesterday, Walter said. Keeps looking north. Won't settle. Nathan watched the wolf pace. North. Always north. The same direction the pack tracks had come from. The same direction they'd disappeared. The pup. He'd seen those small tracks circling his cabin. The pup had been with the pack when they came looking for their alpha. But the pup hadn't been with them when they left. The storm. The chaos. A young wolf. Separated from the others. Still out there. Alone. Nathan pushed himself upright. His head swam. His arms shook. But he got his feet on the floor. What do you think you're doing? Walter closed the book. The pup. Nathan's voice came out rough. There was a pup with the pack. Got separated in the storm. You're not going anywhere. He knows. Nathan pointed at the window. Look at him. He knows his pup is out there, and he can't leave her to go looking. Walter's face didn't change. You have a fever, your legs barely holding together, and you want to go back out there for a wolf pup that's been alone in a blizzard for 5 days? Yes? The door opened. Grace Holloway stepped in, a clipboard in her hand. She took one look at Nathan upright, feet on the floor, jaw set, and her expression hardened. Absolutely not. I'm not asking permission. You almost died getting here. But Grace moved between Nathan and the door, not aggressive, but firm. Hypothermia, frostbite on 3 fingers, infection in your leg that would have gone septic in another 12 hours. You want to throw all that away for his family. Nathan stood. His left leg buckled. He caught himself on the bed frame. That wolf out there has been pacing for 2 days because he can't go looking for his pup. If he leaves her, she might not make it. She still needs him close. So he's stuck, watching, knowing. Grace's eyes narrowed. That's a wolf's problem, not yours. No. Nathan's voice dropped, quieter now. It's mine, too. He looked at the window, at the black shape still pacing in the snow. 6 years ago, I watched my best friend bleed out because I couldn't get him to a medic in time. My dog took a bullet trying to protect him. I held them both. Grace went still. I came out here to stop feeling, to stop losing people. Figured if I didn't care about anything, I couldn't fail anyone else. Nathan met her eyes. But that pup is alive. I know it. And that wolf out there, he's counting on someone to do what he can't. You don't know the pup's alive. No. But I know what it's like to be stuck. To watch someone you love suffer while you can't do a thing about it. Nathan took a step toward the door. His leg screamed. He ignored it. I'm not going to sit in a warm room and let that happen, even if it's a wolf. Silence. Walter's voice came from the chair. I'll fuel up the backup sled. Nathan drove north. Alone. The storm had weakened visibility, stretched further now, maybe 50 yards, but the cold was worse. It cut through his layers, found every gap in his clothing, settled into his bones like it belonged there. He followed instinct, memory, the direction the black wolf had been staring, the terrain he'd crossed days ago, half blind in a whiteout. The tracks were gone, buried under fresh snowfall. But Nathan knew these mountains, knew the sheltered spots where animals took refuge, the dead falls and rock overhangs and hollowed-out spaces where something small might hide. He stopped the sled at a ridge. Got off. His left leg dragged, the shrapnel wound pulsing with each step. Hey, his voice cracked in the cold. Come on, where are you? Nothing, just wind, just white. He walked, checked under fallen trees, dug through drifts with bare hands when his gloves got too stiff to bend. His fingers went numb. His breath came harder, each exhale burning in his chest. A tuft of gray fur caught on a branch. Small, fine, close. Nathan pushed deeper, following nothing but instinct now, the sense that something was here, nearby, waiting to be found. He went the wrong way twice, doubled back, almost gave up. His leg was failing. His vision kept blurring at the edges. Then a sound, so faint he almost missed it. A whimper, thin and weak, coming from beneath a massive deadfall. Nathan dropped to his knees, dug. Snow flying, ice scraping his hands. Under the tangle of branches, half buried, curled into a ball, a gray shape, tiny, shivering. The pup. Nathan reached in. His fingers closed around the small body, cold, too cold. But when he pulled the pup out, he felt it a heartbeat against his palm, faint, rapid, alive. I got you. He unzipped his coat with numb fingers, tucked the pup against his chest, inside his thermal layers, against his skin. I got you. Hang on. The pup squirmed weakly. A small nose pressed against Nathan's collarbone, seeking warmth. Nathan zipped his coat, turned back toward the sled. The world tilted. He took one step, two. His left leg gave out. He fell face first into the snow. Cold. Everything was cold. The pup was a small heat against his chest. But even that was fading. His fingers wouldn't move. His legs wouldn't respond. He lay there, breathing, watching his breath crystallize in the air. Images flickered through his mind. Jack's face, pale and slack. Ghost's eyes, going dark. His wife standing in the doorway of their house, her voice tired. "You're not here anymore. Nathan, you left years ago." She was right. He left. He kept leaving. But the pup moved against his chest, a small squirm, fighting, still alive, still trying. Nathan's fingers dug into the snow. His arms trembled. He pushed, fell back, pushed again, got to his knees, then his feet. The world spun. He couldn't feel his hands, couldn't feel his face, but his legs were moving, one step, then another. The sled, 50 feet away, maybe 60. He walked, fell, walked again. The pup's heartbeat against his chest was the only warmth left in the world. Nathan reached the sled, collapsed against it. His fingers fumbled at the ignition once, twice, 3 times, and the engine caught. He drove. He didn't remember the ride back. Didn't remember pulling up to the station. Didn't remember the door opening or the hands that caught him as he fell. He remembered one thing. Walter's voice. Somewhere above him. He's got something in his coat. And then Grace, pulling back the zipper, her sharp intake of breath. "It's alive!" Nathan tried to speak, tried to tell them I found him. I didn't fail, not this time, but the darkness was already closing in. The last thing he felt was the pup being lifted away from his chest. The last thing he heard was Grace's voice, urgent now. "Get me the warming blankets, now!" Then nothing. Nathan drifted in fever dreams. Jack's face floated above him, pale, blood at the corners of his mouth. "Why didn't you save me?" Ghost lay in the snow, eyes open, chest still, snow settling on his fur. Nathan reached for him, but his hands passed through empty air. His wife stood in the doorway of their house. The house he'd walked away from. "You're not capable of love anymore, Nathan. You're just waiting to die." She was right. She was always right. He tried to speak, tried to explain, but his mouth wouldn't work. The words stuck somewhere in his chest, sharp and jagged. Then another voice, softer, closer. "Nathan, Nathan, can you hear me?" He opened his eyes. Grace Holloway's face swam into focus. Behind her, the white ceiling of the research station. The smell of antiseptic, the hum of machines he didn't recognize. Nathan tried to sit up. His arms shook, collapsed. "Easy. You've been out for—" "The pup." His voice came out cracked, barely human. "Where's the— alive? Warming up." The mother accepted him right away. Nathan's body went slack. Air left his lungs in a rush. Alive. He'd done it. He'd actually— "You almost died." Grace's voice was flat, clinical. "Hypothermia. Your core temperature was 89 degrees when we got you inside. Another 20 minutes out there and we'd be digging a hole for you instead of treating you." Nathan didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling. "Frostbite on 3 fingers. The shrapnel wound in your leg is infected again. We're pumping you full of antibiotics. But if it doesn't respond, I don't care." Grace stopped. Nathan turned his head, looked at her. "I don't care about the leg. I don't care about the fingers. I brought him back. Him." Nathan's throat tightened. He tried to swallow. Couldn't. I got him this time. I didn't let him not this time." His voice broke. And then the words came. Not the ones he meant to say. The ones buried deepest, locked away for 6 years, now spilling out in the grip of fever and exhaustion. "Jack, Ghost, I held them. I held them both, and I couldn't. They died in my arms, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't—" Tears, hot on his face. He couldn't wipe them, couldn't move, couldn't stop. I let them die. I was supposed to protect them, and I let them die. Grace didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. And Nathan kept talking, the fever stripping away every defense he'd built, every wall, every locked door. My wife, she tried. 3 years she tried to reach me, and I turned into this hollow thing, this dead thing that couldn't feel anything, couldn't give her anything. She'd cry, and I'd just sit there. His chest heaved. The IV line tugged at his arm. I came out here to die. The words fell out of him like stones. You understand, I came out here because I hoped one of these winters the cold would just finish it. And I'd never have to— He couldn't finish. The silence stretched. Thick. Suffocating. Nathan became aware of movement in the doorway. Walter. Standing there. How long had he been listening? They'd heard everything. Both of them. Every weakness. Every failure. Every pathetic, cowardly thought he'd kept hidden in the dark corners of his mind. A 58-year-old man, crying in a hospital bed, confessing that he'd spent 6 years hoping to freeze to death in the mountains because he was too much of a coward to do it himself. The shame hit him like a physical blow, worse than the cold, worse than the frostbite, worse than the shrapnel that had been lodged in his leg for 15 years. I should go. His voice was a whisper, ragged, pathetic. Soon as I can walk, I'm gone. Can't walk, Walter said from the doorway. Then I'll crawl, drag myself out if I have to. You shouldn't have to. He couldn't look at them, couldn't bear to see the pity in their eyes. Or worse, the contempt. 6 years of walls, 6 years of carefully constructed numbness, and now he was lying in a bed, weeping like a child, while strangers watched him fall apart, worthless, pathetic, coward. The words cycled through his mind. His father's voice, his drill sergeant's voice, his own voice, the one that whispered in the dark when he couldn't sleep. You failed them. You fail everyone. That's what you do. That's who you are. The room was quiet. Nathan stared at the wall, his face wet, his chest hollow. Then Walter moved, crossed the room, sat in the chair beside the bed. My first year back from Da Nang, he said. I put a gun in my mouth 3 times. Nathan's breath caught. Never pulled the trigger. Not because I was brave, because I was too scared to go through with it. Walter's voice was flat, matter of fact. Spent 20 years running from what I saw over there. Drinking, fighting, pushing away every person who tried to get close. Nathan didn't respond. Couldn't. You're one of them fools who feels everything too hard. That's your trouble. You cared so much about those men, that dog, that when you lost them, you figured the only way to survive was to stop caring about anything at all. It worked. Did it? Nathan closed his eyes. You've been at it 6 years. That's nothing. Son, some fights take longer than others. I'm not fighting. Nathan's voice was hollow. Empty. I gave up a long time ago. Did you? Walter leaned back in the chair, his eyes steady. Unblinking, held Nathan's. You dragged a dying wolf through a blizzard, cut her open with a hunting knife and saved her life. Then you went back out there half dead yourself and pulled that pup out of a snowdrift. Walter paused. That's not a man who gave up. That's a man who forgot what he was fighting for. Nathan stared at the ceiling. The shame was still there, burning in his chest. The embarrassment of being seen, truly seen by people who were strangers until a week ago. But underneath it, something else stirred. Something small and unfamiliar. "Get some rest," Walter said. He stood, moved toward the door. "The wolves aren't going anywhere. Neither are we." He left. Nathan lay in the silence. The machines hummed. His breath came slow and ragged. Through the window, he could see the sky lightening. Dawn. Another day. The door opened again. Grace. She didn't speak, just set a cup of coffee on the table beside his bed. Steam rose from the surface. "The male wolf is still outside." Her voice was softer now, less clinical. "Walter says he's been sitting by the window all morning, hasn't moved." Nathan turned his head. "Like he's waiting for something." Grace looked at him for a long moment, then left. Nathan lay there, staring at the coffee he couldn't reach, thinking about a black wolf who'd refused to leave, who'd stayed when everyone else would have run, waiting. For what? Nathan walked to the window on the third morning. His legs shook with each step. The cane Grace had found somewhere dug into his palm. But he moved. That was something. Outside. The sky was clearing. Thin blue showed through the breaking clouds. The storm had finally spent itself. And there, in the snow 20 feet from the building, 3 wolves. The gray female stood on 3 legs. Unsteady. Learning her new balance. But standing. Alive. The pup bounced around her in circles, full of energy, twice the size he'd been when Nathan pulled him from under that deadfall. And the black wolf, lying nearby, watching his family. Still, Nathan pressed his hand against the cold glass. He'd done that. He'd held them together when everything tried to tear them apart. The door opened behind him. Walter, 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Nathan without speaking, then stood beside him at the window. They watched the wolves in silence. "You know why I reckon you made it." Walter's voice was quiet. "Out there. I mean, when by all rights you shouldn't have." "Luck." "Nope." Walter sipped his coffee. "You're one of them fools who feels everything too hard. Always have been. I'd wager. You cared so deep about those men, that dog, that when you lost them, you figured the only way to keep breathing was to stop caring about anything at all." Nathan didn't answer. "You tried to quit, moved to the middle of nowhere, stopped talking to folks, figured if you didn't love anything, you couldn't lose it." Walter paused. "How'd that work out for you?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "I'm still here." "Are you?" The question hung in the air between them. Nathan watched the pup tackle his mother, tumbling into the snow. The gray wolf nipped at him gently, a correction, not a punishment. The black wolf's tail moved just once, barely visible, and Nathan realized he'd never seen a wolf do that before. "You carried that pup against your chest in a blizzard," Walter said. "Cut a wolf open with a hunting knife by firelight. Almost died twice in 1 week for critters that can't say thank you. So that's not a man who stopped caring. That's a man who cares so much he's scared to admit it." Nathan's grip tightened on the cane. "The war didn't break you, son. Losing your friend didn't break you. You're just bent." Walter finished his coffee, set the cup on the windowsill. "And bent things straighten out, given time." He walked away, left Nathan standing at the window, alone, but not empty. Nathan watched the wolves for a long time. The pup had worn himself out, curled now against his mother's side. The black wolf hadn't moved, but his eyes were half closed, relaxed, content, a family, together. because Nathan couldn't walk away. He thought about Jack, about Ghost, about the things he'd never said, the goodbye he'd never gotten, the words that stuck in his throat while the life drained out of the people he loved. He'd spent 6 years punishing himself for surviving, building walls, digging moats, constructing an elaborate prison of silence and solitude, telling himself it was protection, telling himself it was necessary. But every time something needed him, the gray wolf at his door, the pup in the snow, he'd answered, without thinking, without hesitating. Some part of him, buried deep beneath the grief and the guilt, had never stopped caring. He'd tried to freeze it, starve it, suffocate it in silence, and it had survived anyway. Nathan reached into his pocket. His fingers found something cold, smooth. He pulled it out. Ghost's collar. He didn't remember packing it. But there it was. It had been in his coat pocket when he'd left the cabin, the same pocket where he'd carried it home from that convoy 6 years ago. He looked at the worn leather. The tag, too, faded to read. The smell of dust and years gone by. He'd carried it like a wound, a reminder of failure, a token of guilt. But looking at it now, really looking, he saw something else. 15 years Ghost had served beside him. 15 years of loyalty, of protection, of a bond that didn't need words. Ghost had died protecting someone he loved. That was who Ghost was. That was what he'd chosen. And Nathan had been there, at the end, holding him, making sure he didn't die alone. Maybe that wasn't failure. Maybe that was the only gift he could have given. Nathan put the collar back in his pocket. But this time, not to hide it, to carry it. The door opened. Grace. She crossed to the window, stood beside him, looked out at the wolves. They'll be ready to go in a few days, once she's strong enough to travel on that leg. Nathan nodded. Where will they go? North, probably, back to their old territory. Or they'll find a new one. Grace paused. Wolves are adaptable. They figure things out. Nathan watched the black wolf stand, stretch, walk a slow circle around his family before lying down again. What about you? Grace's voice was different now, softer. Where will you go? Back to the cabin. Where else? Alone. Nathan turned his head, looked at her. She met his gaze. Held it. Walter says we're short-handed out here. Someone to check the trap lines. Keep an eye on the elk herds. You know this terrain better than anyone. That sounds like a job. Sounds like a reason to leave the cabin once in a while. Nathan almost smiled. Almost. I'd have to talk to people. You, Walter. Would that be so terrible? He looked back at the wolves. The pup had woken up, was chewing on his father's ear. The black wolf tolerated it with the patience of something that had waited through much worse. No, Nathan said. Maybe not. Grace nodded, didn't push, just stood beside him, watching the wolves. After a while, she spoke again. The male, he's been looking at the window all morning. Walter says he's been doing it since you woke up. Nathan looked at the black wolf. Their eyes met through the glass. The wolf stood, walked toward the building, stopped 10 feet away, and sat down, waiting. I think, Nathan said slowly, he wants to say goodbye. Nathan went home on a Tuesday. Grace drove him most of the way. Walter followed in the station's pickup. The bed loaded with supplies, more than Nathan had asked for. Enough for 2 people. Just in case. The cabin appeared through the trees like something from another life. Snow piled against the walls, ice crystals on the windows, the woodpile lower than he remembered. Grace stopped the snowmobile. Nathan climbed off. His leg held. Barely. "You sure about this?" He looked at the cabin. At the door he'd walked through 1,000 times. At the porch where he'd stood with a rifle. Staring down a wolf who wouldn't leave. "Yeah." Grace nodded. Didn't argue. "Radio if you need anything. Walter checks the frequency every morning." "I know." She hesitated. Something in her face, not pity, not worry. Something else. "The job offer stands. Whenever you're ready." Nathan almost smiled. Almost. "I'll think about it." He watched them drive away. The sound of engines fading into the trees. Then silence. He stood in the snow for a long moment, breathing, listening to nothing. Then he went inside. The cabin was cold. Dead cold. The stove had been out for over 2 weeks. Nathan knelt. Arranged kindling. Struck a match. The flame caught, spread. Heat began to push back against the emptiness. He filled the kettle. Set it on the stove. Pulled a cup from the shelf, 1 cup. The same cup he'd used for 6 years. Then he stopped. Looked at the shelf. At the second cup. Pushed to the back, the one he'd bought when he first moved here, thinking maybe someday. He pulled it down. Set it beside the first. 2 cups on the counter. Old habit. He almost put one away, but he left them both out, just in case. Sunset came slow and gold, the first clear sky in weeks. Nathan sat on the porch in his wooden chair, coffee cooling in his hands. The rifle was inside cleaned, oiled, put away. Not by the door anymore. He thought about the wolves. Released 3 days ago. Grace had opened the enclosure gate, and they'd hesitated, the gray female testing her 3-legged gait. The pup bouncing with impatience. The black wolf watching Nathan through the fence one last time. Then they'd headed north, toward the mountain passes. Back to their old territory. Maybe. Or somewhere new. He wondered if they'd remember. If the black wolf ever thought about the human who'd carried his mate through a blizzard, who'd pulled his pup from under a deadfall. Then he realized it didn't matter. He'd remember them. The sky turned pink, then purple, then dark. Nathan sat in the silence, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It just felt quiet. A sound reached him just before true dark. Footsteps. Light, careful, moving through the snow at the edge of the clearing. Nathan set down his cup, rose slowly from the chair. 3 shapes emerged from the tree line. Silver gray, black, and small. The wolves. Nathan's breath caught in his chest. The black wolf stepped forward, into the last light. His coat was clean, well fed. No ice in his fur, no desperation in his eyes. The gray female followed. Her limp was faint now she'd learned to balance on 3 legs, learned to move again, learned to keep up. The pup bounced between them, full of energy. Alive. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, 30 feet away, close enough to see, far enough to run. Nathan didn't move, didn't speak. The black wolf raised his head, opened his mouth, and howled. The sound filled the valley, and low, rising and falling, echoing off the mountains until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Nathan felt it in his chest, a vibration that went deeper than hearing. The gray female joined in, her voice higher, threading through her mates. Then the pup, voice cracking. Too young to hit the notes, but trying anyway. A chorus, rising into the dark. Nathan's eyes burned. He didn't wipe them. The howl faded, echoed against the peaks, died into silence. The black wolf looked at Nathan. Their eyes met across the snow. The wolf lowered his head. Just slightly. A gesture Nathan had seen before that first night, on the porch, when everything had started. Not submission, not fear, something else. Something that didn't need words. Nathan's throat closed. He couldn't have spoken if he'd tried. The black wolf held the posture for a long moment, then turned. The gray female fell in beside him. The pup bounded ahead, then circled back, staying close. They walked toward the trees, three shapes against the snow, at the tree line. The black wolf paused, looked back one last time. Then they disappeared, swallowed by the dark. Gone. Nathan stood on his porch until the cold crept through his coat, until his coffee went ice cold in the cup he'd forgotten he was holding. When he finally went inside, he didn't feel empty. He felt something else, something he hadn't felt in 6 years, like belonging. He looked at the 2 cups on the counter, the fire crackling in the stove, Ghost's collar, still hanging on the nail by the door where it had always been, where it would stay. He thought about Grace's offer, about Walter's words, about tomorrow. Not with dread, not with emptiness, just thought about it. Nathan Cole lay down in his bed, closed his eyes, and for the first time since Jack Brennan died in his arms, he fell asleep without dreading the morning. There's a quiet that comes after a story like this one. Not silence exactly, but something heavier, something that settles in the chest and doesn't ask to be named. Many of us have stood at a door we didn't want to open. Some of us have carried things we never told anyone about, losses that grew lighter only because we kept walking, not because we ever fully understood them. Perhaps you've known what it is to care for something you thought you'd lost the right to care for. Perhaps you've felt that strange ache of being needed when you'd convinced yourself you had nothing left to give. We don't always get answers. We don't always find the words. And that's all right. Some things aren't meant to be resolved, only carried, and sometimes shared, and eventually set down when we're ready. It's okay if this story stirred something old. It's okay if it didn't fix anything, just touched it gently. That's enough. That's always been enough. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.